So about Bernie Rhodes, one night Mick Jones and his buddy Tony James went out to a trashy music venue called London Rooms. The music scene in London was lame at that time, and they were checking out a new band called Deaf School. And they ran into a guy named Bernie Rhodes. Mick asked him if he was a piano player because he was wearing a hat. "No, but you're wearing one of my shirts," Bernie replied. He'd been designing shirts for Malcolm McLaurin's Sex Boutique, and Mick had one on. Once the pair told them they were forming a band called London SS, Bernie said, without ever hearing them, he would be their manager. It was punk dressed up with shocking Nazi images. The London SS band lineup was still being determined. Because London SS were managed by Rhodes, they were being introduced to others on the scene. Mick Jones and Tony James actually auditioned for the Sex Pistols in October of 1975, but fashion was king and their look was all wrong. I remember a bunch of guys with hair down their backs. They looked ridiculous and we were all laughing. Mick, instead of going upstairs, picked up a guitar and started jamming with us, and it would have worked except for the hair. Rhodes was an associate of Malcolm McLaurin, who was also working with the Sex Pistols. With McLaurin off in the States, Rhodes would soon discover John Lydon and hire him to sing for the Sex Pistols, forming one of the most iconic and influential bands of the era. But soon, McLaurin returned from the U.S. and reasserted control of the Sex Pistols. Rhodes was angry. He was determined to form and manage his own group, and that's where Mick Jones and London SS came in. London SS auditioned members through 1975 and early 1976, with many members staying for one rehearsal or less. Bernie Rhodes found them a rehearsal space under a cafe called the Paddington Kitchen. Mick Jones put a poster from a Holocaust documentary on the wall. A long line of potential bandmates responded to their ad and auditioned for the band. Future Clash drummer Topper Headon auditioned, played well, and he looked the part, but he wanted to make 25 quid a week. So after a few rehearsals, he left for paying cover band gigs. Paul Simonon even accompanied a friend to an audition, and he looked cool, so Mick Jones asked him to sing Roadrunner by Jonathan Richman. He didn't know the song and he couldn't sing, so that was a disaster. Morrissey even applied. "We got this letter from this bloke in Manchester called Morrissey. We thought he couldn't possibly know anything about rock and roll coming from the north, so we chucked it in the bin." The London SS name and Nazi imagery were chosen deliberately to be shocking to the older generation, but the young band members were somewhat clueless as to the true implications. Look and shock took a front seat, but Bernie Rhodes and Mick Jones are both Jewish, and when Rhodes challenged the band on the Nazi-inspired images and name, London SS band members were somewhat gobsmacked and rightfully uncomfortable. One night we were asked to meet Bernie Rhodes at the Bull and Bush pub on Shepherd Bush Green. It was a really heavy pub and very crowded. Bernie took out this bag full of SS paraphernalia, swastikas, daggers, all this stuff. He emptied it all on the table and he said, "So what do you think of it? If you call yourself the London SS, this is what you're going to have to deal with." The Sex Pistols were starting to develop a following, and Malcolm McLaurin came to see London SS rehearse and see if they had some promise. When McLaurin declared they were going nowhere, it seemed a signal the band was done. They broke up, never having played a single show, and leaving behind only a bootleg recording of one rehearsal. Members of London SS would go on to form The Damned and Generation X. Fast forward to 2012, original London SS guitarist Ewan Brady has reformed the band. The new version of London SS are still active today. Bernie Rhodes saw potential in Mick Jones, and he stayed on as his manager. They both remembered the cocky attitude and the cool look of Paul Simonon. Bernie encouraged Mick to ditch Tony James and form a band with Paul, and so Mick reached out to Paul Simonon and asked him to learn to play an instrument. So when Paul picked up the bass, the two connected with Keith Levine on guitar and they all started rehearsing. Whoever was handy played drums. Terry Chimes joined on drums, but he quit after a few weeks. And so the new band were still in search of a lead singer and a drummer and a name. But in February of 1976, a cataclysmic event happened which would cause a shift in the direction of the new band and the punk movement in general.